I've been thinking a lot about self-acceptance lately. I should at this point make sure I'm clear about what I mean by self-acceptance. What I mean is accepting the truth of oneself. We often have reasons why we resist accepting the truth of ourselves. Generally, this is due to some identity conflict. What I mean by this is that when the truth of who we are is dissonant with who we believe we are, which is a significant part of identity, then we most often reject the truth of who we are rather than accepting it. The results of this are almost always negative and can include things like guilt, blaming others, denial, etc. These flower into things like constantly seeking distraction because we can't stand to be alone with our own thoughts, depression, self-hatred, and or stunted development. Stunted development is, to my mind, of particular note. If we don't accept the truth of who we are because that truth is negative, then we prevent ourselves from being able to get help or grow beyond it. This is why the first step to overcoming an addiction is admitting that one is addicted. That is, accepting the truth that one is an addict. If one lives in denial of this, rejects the truth about themselves, then the addiction will hopelessly enslave that individual. For example, if someone believes themselves to be a good parent, then anything that conflicts with that causes emotional distress. If the reaction is to reject the truth, then the parent is unable to learn how to be a better parent. I do think there is a second reason why people may struggle with full self-acceptance. If there is some part of themselves that they believe is societally unacceptable, then they may reject that aspect of themselves to try and be more socially acceptable. This can happen in many ways, though it can be a softer self-rejection than what I discussed previously. Such self-rejection nevertheless causes a lot of internal stress, especially if one is caught between two states, feeling unable to fully express who they are. This forces one inward and creates deep fears of being found out. Sexuality often suffers from these sorts of issues, depending upon the attitudes of the culture, but it isn't alone. Anything perceived to be unpopular within the culture one finds oneself in, which is often very localized, can suffer from this, including things such as political views, religious beliefs, or any other opinion. This sort of self-rejection is based on a fear of rejection from others. The response can be deep levels of paranoia and self-rejection, but the response can also go in the opposite way, a sort of aggressiveness about the subject. This is understandable, but also tends to destroy sympathy, which I suppose may be the desired outcome, since it often results in the expected rejection response. If people expressed a positive response instead of a negative one, acceptance, or at least tolerance, rather than rejection, then one would have to confront the fact that they hid who they truly are out of an unfounded fear. This realization may also be quite painful. I said at the start that I've been thinking about self-acceptance a lot lately, and that's because of something related to this latter type of self-rejection. And it's at this point that I've run out of script, because I wasn't quite sure how to go. I don't necessarily always want to script out these sorts of things, but this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I wanted to try to make sure my thoughts were in order. So, as you might see, the video playing right now is Guild Wars 1. That's my plan for these sorts of videos, and it's specifically a fight with a doppelganger. This is an event that occurs partway through the game, and I've chosen to do it on a bunch of different characters because I had a specific quest for it on a bunch of them. And it felt very appropriate to this whole self-acceptance thing. Often we have to overcome our fears that are within us, or discrepancies or dissonances that are within us, to be able to kind of resolve and become more fully who we are. In the game, this is represented by the idea of ascension, of fully embracing one's identity as a chosen one gifted with the true sight that enables you to see some otherwise invisible enemies called the Mersat. But this is kind of something that applies to us as well, in the fact that we often have these internal villains that we have to overcome in order to become fully ourselves. And it's not just fully ourselves, but it's fully capable as ourselves. For me, the struggle that I've been referring to here is it's this weird sort of conflict. It's not the first type, a conflict of dissonance between who I believe I am and the truth of who I am. At least I don't think so. But it's the second type, a fear of rejection from others. And this has to do with specifically certain things that I'm passionate about, and let's go ahead and lay some stuff out here, rather than kind of talking around stuff, which is the problem. It's the problem, is talking around stuff. So, to put this as straightforward as I can, I'm a Christian, which people probably have been able to figure out, given that I do an entire show on Christian theology called Geekdom of God on this YouTube channel. And there's another aspect to me, which is that I'm my favorite artistic subject is the human body, the nude human body in particular. And, like some people are super fond of flowers or mountains or whatever else. But the human body is of particular interest to me. I think that methods of reproduction are really fascinating from just like how this works, how it shapes society standpoint. Like, for example, whenever I do any sort of world building with a sufficiently differentiated species, I like to figure out how does the reproduction for this species work and how does that affect their society and how it develops. But there's more than that as well, where I also really, for whatever reason, care quite a lot about the sex industry, the sex entertainment industry, sex workers. They're human beings involved here, and I care about them, and I care about how they're being treated. And that creates a conflict for me because I feel like a lot of Christians don't. A lot of the Christian community, and this is, again, a perception, and I may run into the very fact that I anticipate a rejection that won't be there, and I sincerely hope that's the case. Sex workers are people, and they should be demonstrated, love should be demonstrated to them. Jesus did that. He would care about prostitutes, and the religious leaders of his day were not exactly thrilled about that. That was one of the slanders they labeled at him, was that he was a friend of those sorts of people, tax collectors also. And it's a community that I want to be able to somehow form connections to demonstrate Jesus' love to, because Jesus does love them. I mean, Jesus loves everyone. That's part of why John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world." The world includes all people. It includes your billionaires. It includes your people in poverty. It includes your terrorists as well as your sex workers, as well as the people in the church. Like, everyone is included in that. And not everyone will reciprocate that love. Not everyone will requite it, I guess. But the issue that I run into is that this fear of rejection from the Christian community makes it very difficult for me to feel outspoken about anything related to these particular passions. And that's frustrating for me. And I want to be able to feel that I can do this. And I need the courage to be able to do it. And so I have to accept the truth of this is a passion that's in me. And whether or not rejection comes, I can't just do nothing with it. And I don't know what to do with it just yet, but it's something that I want to figure out what to do with. And if I try to hide it, it's useless. So if I want to serve God fully, I need to accept that I've been made, for whatever reason, passionate about the sex worker community. And I'm going to have to bear the consequences of that, I suppose. Anyway, I guess that's mostly what I wanted to say here. Like I said, the initial part was scripted, so it probably flowed a little bit more naturally. Not naturally, a little bit more succinctly and concisely. But hopefully what I was trying to convey with it comes through. That the big issue with self-acceptance that I'm trying to address here is the idea that we need to accept the truth of who we are. And there's that saying of be yourself. And it takes a lot of courage. It sometimes requires us to confront hard and difficult and painful truths about ourselves so that way we can overcome them. And it sometimes requires us to face the fear of rejection from others so that we can overcome it too. But hopefully, at least talking about this has been helpful to someone out there. And I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up and close. So until next time, everyone, take care. Bye-bye.